All right, welcome back. Hope you're all having a great week. Today we're continuing our RBT exam practice question series, where we're going through some RBT practice questions together and breaking them down. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Please like and subscribe. Visit rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials. We offer 3 full practice exams, a task list study guide. Our combo pack comes with everything. And of course, we have our competency study guide as well. Congratulations to all of those who recently passed their exam. We are doing a shout out this week, so let us know when you do pass. Other than that, let's keep working hard, keep studying hard, get to our questions. Question 1. For a prompt to be used correctly, it must occur blank the target response. As a BCBA, this is one of the most common mistakes I see first-time RBTs make, is they prompt in the wrong place. What is a prompt? Prompt is a cue or a signal evoking a target behavior. So we're helping our client demonstrate the behavior we want to see. A prompt is also a temporary SD. And if you think about an SD, what do we know about SDs? Well, they come before the response because what do? Well, they typically evoke the response. So a prompt is also known as a temporary SD. When does that prompt need to occur? Before, after, or it depends on the behavior. D is out. It doesn't depend on the behavior. A good prompt, a correct prompt, should always occur in this spot. It's not before or after, so we don't have the response deliver feedback and then prompt. It isn't after the behavior. It's going to be before. A correct prompt happens before the target response occurs. We give our SD, we prompt, then a response occurs, then a consequence. For a prompt to be used correctly, it has to occur before the target response. Again, remember, a prompt is just a temporary SD. An SD comes before the response. Therefore, a prompt must come before the response. The RBT and a BCBA conduct a forced choice preference assessment using a toy truck, a toy soldier, and a baseball. They determine the toy soldier is the most preferred stimulus and the baseball is the least. Of the following, what would the next step be? Next best step be? This is a tricky question, so go slow. Really think about what the question is asking. They want to know the next best step. So far, we know we did a preference assessment. We know the toy soldier is the most preferred stimulus and the baseball is the least. First question you ask yourself, does a preference assessment mean the toy soldier and the baseball and the truck are reinforcers? No, a preference assessment does not determine reinforcers. It just determines preferred stimuli. Second question, because the baseball was the least preferred, does that mean the baseball can't function as a reinforcer? No, again, maybe this client just likes a toy soldier and a truck better than a baseball, but they might like a baseball better than other items. We can't just eliminate it. Based on these 3 items, it's the least favorite, but it doesn't mean overall the client doesn't enjoy it. Going off those 2 questions, we can now answer this question accurately. So of the following, what should the next best step be? A, use a toy soldier as a reinforcer. Why can't we pick this one? Well, we just said a preference assessment doesn't determine if something is reinforcing or not. Just because the client preferred the toy soldier doesn't mean it's a reinforcer. A is incorrect. We can't just start using it as a reinforcer. B, use the baseball as a punisher. Same thing. All we know is what they like better than the other thing. Doesn't mean the baseball is a punisher. Doesn't mean they don't like baseball. We can't just start assuming things based off preference assessments. C, determine if the toy soldier is reinforcing. Yes, we've done our preference assessment. Now we need to see how does that toy soldier actually affect the behavior. What if the client doesn't want to work for the toy soldier? Then it doesn't matter how much they like it. It's not a reinforcer. So the next step after a preference assessment, we now need to see how do these stimuli impact behavior. And then D, never use the baseball during treatment. Again, if the baseball is reinforcing, go ahead and use it, right? We don't know yet. All we know is what they prefer. That's it. Don't overrate a preference assessment's effectiveness as a reinforcer assessment. It's not, okay? It only identifies preferred stimuli. Answer here is C. Determine if the toy soldier is reinforcing. The following data was recorded during a Tuesday session. The client screamed at his mom. 15 minutes later, the client screamed at his dad. 15 minutes later, the client screamed at his brother. 10 minutes later, the client screamed at his brother. What is the total IRT? Be careful. What is the question asking? Question wants a total. Typically, you'll see average, right? We want to find an average. In this case, we want a total. So you have to be careful. When we look at total, what do we want to do? Well, we want to add everything together. In this case, our inter-response times. Inter-response times are time in between behaviors. So let's break it down. First behavior, client screamed at his mom. No IRT yet. 15 minutes later, client screamed at his dad. Okay, first IRT, 15 minutes. 15 minutes later, client screamed at his brother. Second IRT, 15 minutes. 10 minutes later, the client screamed at his brother. Third IRT, 10 minutes. If we're going to get to total, what are we doing? We add them up. 15 plus 15 is 30. 30 plus 10 is 40. 40 is our total IRT. Now we just need to go to our answer choices. A, 15 minutes is incorrect. B, 10 minutes is incorrect. C, 13.3 minutes is the average. Leaves us with D, 40 minutes. That's what we predicted. If you do all your work up front on the question, the test becomes a lot easier. I fill a pot with water. I place it on the stove with the top and then turn the stove to high heat. Once the water starts boiling, I put the pasta into the water. When the pasta is done, I strain it and mix it with the sauce. If you wanted to measure latency for putting pasta into the water, what would the SD be? Okay. This is a good example of how this stuff applies to real life, right? Think about this whole behavior sequence, right? It's pretty much a chain, right? But think about this is something we do every day, and you can apply so many different principles and terms to the situation. This question just wants to know about latency. So what is latency? Latency is the time in between the SD and a response. Specifically, latency for putting pasta into the water. So we need to determine what is the SD for putting pasta into the water. Well, we know the SD comes before the response and it evokes the response. So let's see. A, turning the stove to high heat. Where is that? So I place it on the stove at the top and then turn the stove to high heat once the water starts boiling. Okay. Turning the stove to high heat is not putting pasta into the water, right? We haven't done that yet. B, the water starts boiling. Now we're talking, right? Once the water starts boiling, reinforcement is now available for putting pasta into the water. The water boiling is going to be the SD for me adding pasta. So if I want to measure latency, I need to measure what? Time in between the water starting to boil and me putting pasta into the water. See the pasta being done. Well, the pasta being done happens after you put the pasta into the water. Can't be an SD. Straining the pasta also happens after putting pasta into the water. Can't be an SD. B is going to be our answer. The water starts boiling is our SD for putting pasta into the water. If you were to go from most to least prompting, what order would you implement the following prompts? Verbal, modeling, partial physical, full physical. This question is testing your knowledge on the prompt hierarchy. What is the prompt hierarchy? Well, it's what we use to gauge most to least prompting and least to most prompting. We're either going from the most intrusive, maybe the top of the hierarchy, to the least, to the bottom of the hierarchy. And the thing about the prompt hierarchy is you could argue, and people do, that it's dependent on the client, which is technically true. However, if you're looking at the most intrusive prompt, that is always going to be a full physical prompt. Second most intrusive is always going to be a partial physical. Third most intrusive is almost always going to be modeling. When you think about a prompt hierarchy, and you're going from most to least, always start with full physical, then partial physical, then modeling, and then verbal, gestural. The rest, you can go from there, okay? With that said, this question wants to know, if you were to go from most to least prompting, what order are you going to implement the following prompts? Let's look at A. Full physical, partial physical, modeling, verbal. Are we going most to least? Well, full physical is more than partial is more than modeling is more than verbal. Absolutely going most to least with A. What about B? Verbal, modeling, partial physical, full physical. It's going to be the reverse, right? We're going least to most. Verbal is less than modeling, which is less than partial, which is less than full. C, partial physical, full physical, modeling, and verbal. Partial physical and full physical are swapped here. And then D, full physical, partial physical, verbal, and modeling. Here, verbal and modeling are swapped. If we're going true most to least prompting, it's going to be A, full physical, partial physical, modeling, verbal. Which of the following differential reinforcement procedures teaches a replacement behavior? RBTs need to know DRO, DRI, DRA. There are other DRRs, right? But the three you need to know primarily are DRO, DRI, DRA. Now, which one teaches the replacement behavior? We know DRI does. We know DRA does. Does DRO teach a replacement? It does not. DRO does not teach a replacement behavior. Remember, with the DRO, we're reinforcing in the absence of a behavior, regardless of what behavior is occurring at that moment. Doesn't teach a replacement. So this question is asking, which of the following procedures teaches the replacement behavior? Well, A, DRO, we know is incorrect. B, DRA, yes, DRI does teach a replacement. Always read all of your answer choices. C, DRI and DRO. No, we know DRO does not. D, none of the above. No, we know DRI does. Simple question. Which of the following differential reinforcement procedures teaches a replacement behavior? B, DRI. Which of the following answer choices best represents a scenario where reinforcement was effective? Okay. Tough question for people who might be new to studying. If you've been studying a while and you get this one right, good for you. Question wants to know about reinforcement and effectiveness. How do we determine if a consequence is effective? We look at future behavior. So reinforcement increases future behavior. Punishment decreases future behavior. In this case, if we want to determine if reinforcement was effective, we need to look at future behavior. Did it increase? A, Sandy spends the night in jail for shoplifting. Sandy stops shoplifting. What has Sandy done? Well, her behavior has decreased. It has stopped. A is not reinforcing. B, John receives a Christmas bonus. John is happy. We don't know anything about John's behavior, right? Happy is not something we are going to measure. Okay. John received a Christmas bonus. We don't know why. We don't know what happens in the future. All we know is John is in the mental state of happy. Okay. Does not make it reinforcing. C, Brenda is told to leave the dinner table for throwing food. Brenda throws food every week. Okay. Brenda's behavior is clearly maintaining, right? It's certainly not decreasing. So far, C is the only one where a behavior has actually maintained or increased. A decreased, B, nothing happened, right? John is happy is not something we're measuring. C, Brenda throws food every week. That behavior is continuing. And then D, Bill receives praise for answering a question in class. Bill doesn't answer any more questions. The praise actually punished Bill. Bill stopped answering questions. Bill was punished. The praise was punishment. The only one where the behavior either maintained or increased was C. Brenda was told to leave the dinner table for throwing food. Brenda now throws food every week. A major component of discrete trial training is delivering feedback after a response or no response is given. Which of the following answer choices will be the best way to deliver feedback for correctly engaging in the target behavior of answering what is 2 plus 2? Mouthful, right? Long question, kind of complicated. What is it really asking? Okay, we need to determine that first, especially on the harder questions. The question wants to know about delivering feedback, okay? How do we deliver feedback properly is what it's asking you. The target behavior is what is 2 plus 2. So we're assuming our client is correctly engaging in the target behavior, and then we're delivering feedback. When do we do that? How do we do that? A, nice job sitting in your chair. You earned a token. What's wrong with A? Well, you praise them for sitting in their chair. What is the target behavior? What is 2 plus 2? We need to include the target behavior in our feedback. B, yes, that is correct. You earned a token. Did we include our target behavior in the feedback? We did not. We didn't specify. C, yes, 2 plus 2 does equal 4. You earned a token. All right, there we go. Here's our target behavior, right? We earned a token. Okay, looks good. Correct response. Feedback looks good on C. D, the answer is 4, but you were fidgeting, so you did not earn a token. So common. What's our target behavior? Target behavior is 2 plus 2, which is 4. Client did it correctly, but they're fidgeting. Is fidgeting what we're worried about given our information? No. We're worried about them answering what is 2 plus 2. If the client engages in the target behavior, we need to reinforce them. Okay, we're not worried about the fidgeting here, right? Unless we explicitly say you can't fidget, which based on our information in the question, we don't know that. You can't not reward them for engaging in the target behavior. D is wrong. Our answer is going to be C because we specify and we reward for the right answer. Recently, your client is eloping from the table when presented with a difficult task demand. The client will run to his room, scream, slam the door, and lock the door. Client's dad took the lock off of the door. Now your client cannot lock his door anymore. The dad taking the lock off the door is what type of intervention? When trying to determine interventions, okay, we need to ask ourselves, is it happening before the behavior? Is it happening after, right? Are we teaching replacement behaviors? Are we reinforcing? Are we punishing? This is happening before the behavior can occur. So be careful here. The client does all this stuff, runs to his room, screams, slams the door, locks the door. Now the lock is removed. So when the client does all this, they can't lock his door anymore. The client taking the lock off the door happens before he's able to lock his door again. Okay. Actually, an antecedent intervention. It happens before the behavior. Not a consequence intervention. Okay. We don't know exactly how they respond right when he does all this stuff, this behavior. It's not punishment. We don't know how the future behavior reacts, right? And it's not a consequence. And then it's not differential reinforcement. Okay. It's a form of it's not differential reinforcement. We're not teaching a replacement behavior and we're not delivering reinforcement, right? There is no consequence. All we know is the antecedent intervention. The antecedent intervention is because the client's dad took the lock off the door, preventing the client from locking his door. Preventative measures are antecedents interventions. Reactive measures are consequence interventions. All right, thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. Visit rbtexamreview.com for all of our study materials. As always, work hard, study hard. See you soon.